Well, I usually say a prayer before I begin my message, and today, thanks to Dan and the choir and Maddie, I'm just going to say I'm going to trust in the Lord and do the best I can, okay? So I remember the photo of JFK and Jackie Kennedy, and next to it was a framed photo of the Pope. So this was, in my childhood, we went to my grandma Snoffer's house every Sunday afternoon after church, and then we worked at her house, and then we had supper together. And those photos, the Kennedys and the Pope, they were hung there prominently, and one wasn't higher than the other. They were both there. And so I would look up from my overcooked pot roast, and my stewed tomatoes, and I'd look at those photos and think, those must be some pretty important people. I remember the grown-ups, I was very young, I remember the grown-ups talking about how important John and Jackie Kennedy were, how much they loved them. And then I remember how they talked in hushed, somewhat dark tones about Kennedy's assassination and what a great loss it was to them and to their community of faith and to the country. So I registered this event as one that felt like a deep tectonic shift for my family and their community and our nation. These tectonic shifts happen, right? You're just going along in your daily life, you're doing the best you can, you're trying to put your child through college, you're trying to be kind and generous to your coworkers and your friends and your neighbors. Just trying to do your little part to make the world a better place. Then boom, out of the blue, something out of nowhere happens, and it's like an earthquake. You know, it just takes the ground right out from where you stand, and you try and run, but everywhere you run, the earth is shaking there too. There's no escaping the shift. This feeling of groundlessness, it's just there. And now you're forced into dealing with this new reality. Does this sound familiar to anybody? I mean, this happens all through our lives, right? I mean, maybe someone you love has just ended a relationship, or maybe a hurricane has taken your home and your food. Maybe someone you love is sick or has died. Maybe you're in a war-torn country like Syria and you need to move your family for their safety. Maybe a political change has made you fear for your future and your safety. Maybe a work reorganization leaves you without a job. All you know is things have really shifted. And when things are shifting, when the world we trusted was going to stay the same, don't we all think that the world is just going to stay the same? Like we'll get it all in order and it'll just stay that way? Don't we try to do that sometimes? When we find out that things are shifting, our natural response is fear. We're human. We're just built that way. But the psalmist seems to think that there is a different way. Therefore, we will not fear, though the earth should change. This doesn't sound like the world I live in. I don't know about you guys, but I see people running from and reacting out of fear all the time. Maybe if I stay busy enough, I won't have to talk about my friend who's sick. I won't have to deal with that. Maybe if I just buy some new earrings, I'll feel better. Guilty. TJ Maxx run this week. TJ Maxx run this week. Had to get some new earrings just to settle myself down. Maybe I'll write a message over Facebook or text or email to tell that person what I'm really thinking because I really don't understand what they're thinking. Fear makes us do crazy stuff. Fear will bring out our judgmental parts. It will bring out our self-critical parts. It will bring out our angry parts and our self-righteous and certain parts. I mean, you do all know, right, that deep down, even though I have my insecurities, I know I'm right and you're wrong, right? Yeah. I think we all resemble that description from time to time. And even when we try not to give in to fear, it can haunt us. Sometimes we try to stuff it down, push it away, get numbed out so we don't have to deal with it. It's like we put our fears in one of those nice pressure cookers. And if we don't watch out, the whole thing can blow up. But despite all the potential harm that comes from acting out of fear, contemporary neuroscience confirms that fear is an absolutely natural part of being human. We know this, right? It's hardwired into our brain's limbic system, that reptilian brain part of ours, by the age of 2. Fear is one of our strongest responses, built in to help us survive, right, from physical danger. And you'll be happy to know that other parts of our brains develop over time, and we can actually begin to take stimulus in with new perception. We can learn, obviously, and we also learn new ways of reacting to the incoming stimulus. But this takes work, and this takes attention. What happens if we don't pay attention and take care of this fear response? The fear response becomes our default neural response, which is perhaps why we as a country are a deeply anxious people. In a recent article in Time magazine, Janice Whitlock, director of the Cornell Research Program on Self-Injury and Recovery, said, "If you wanted to create an environment to churn out really angsty people, we've done it. We're in a cauldron of stimulus that we can't get away from. We don't want to get away from, or we don't know how to get away from." I, for one, when I read that, felt a little bit better because I realized it's not just me, it's not just some of our young people. This is a societal trend. The song of God whispers something different, a different way. Therefore, we will not fear. The God of Jacob is our refuge. Something deep down inside me knows that that is true. Something deep down knows that the psalmist is right. We have everything we need right here inside us to turn our terror into boldness and our sorrow into joy. Now, I'm not going to tell you why I know this, but shelf after shelf of self-help books are written on the subject of conquering your fear, finding joy and happiness, dealing with change. Here in this beautiful psalm, written thousands of years ago, this writer gives us a step-by-step guide of how to go from fear to faith. Now, if you have fallen asleep, if you have zoned out, except for you guys, you've already heard the sermon once. You're okay. This is the time to listen up. Be still and know that I am God. Listen to the Hebrew. Harpu, udeu, ki anoki, Elohim. Just like that. So much wisdom in so few words. Let's start with harpu. Harpu is translated as be still. Now, be still is an imperative, which means like it has that big exclamation point after it. Okay, so this is like when your mother told you, go to your room. There are no ifs, ands, or buts about this. This is important. If you want to learn how to go from fear to faith, you need to do this. You want to do this. Be still. Now, the other interesting thing about this word, this verb, is that it actually in the original Hebrew derives from a verb rapha, which means to cause yourself to let go, to let yourself become weak. This is a command about letting go and surrendering. Do you hear that much in our culture? Anybody hear that? Let go, surrender. Be weak. Not very common. So I think it's kind of as if you and I and most of the Northern Hemisphere are like swimming in this fishbowl, right? And the messages coming at us go something like this: work hard, strive for money, strive for power, strive for happiness. You're separate from everyone else, so watch your back. Keep everything under control. Make sure to make this world a better place. Please try to solve the world's problems. So just to stay alive in this fishbowl, we feed our egos, we feed our opinions, our cravings, and our fears. But what if just outside of this fishbowl was the rest of the ocean, a deep, peaceful place of freedom? Would you want to try to find your way to the ocean? Don't get me wrong, I firmly believe that hard work and working together to build healthy, sustainable relationships and families and communities is incredibly important. And working together to ensure that our institutions are just and that everyone's voice is heard, that is living out the way of Jesus. But it's when those noble goals get a little too wrapped up in our egos or our self-righteousness that I wonder if we need to go back and listen again to Psalm 46. Let go of the tightly wrapped ego and surrender into something so much greater than yourself. Tara Brach, psychologist, writer, and founder of the Insight Meditation community, calls this the sacred pause. The sacred pause. Sometimes all it takes is to take one good, deep breath, and you can shift from the flow of fear and anger and certitude, I guess I would say. And then you can shift that with the sacred pause to a flow of courage or compassion or curiosity. I don't know, probably none of you have ever had these tense moments where you're in conflict or you're in a discussion with someone that you don't agree with. If you can take this sacred pause, just take a sacred pause. Sometimes your mind, your brain can shift, your heart can shift. And sometimes we need to take those sacred pauses all during our day. And I would just say that as we are moving into this colder season, it was snowing in North Granby this morning, we have these opportunities. You can take this sacred pause with you wherever you go, any time of day. So when you wake up in the morning, if you're anything like me, you're like, oh, I really like my nice warm bed. You can take that sacred pause and be thankful and think about what a great day you're going to have. Or in the middle of the day, when you're overwhelmed with everything that's in the news, you take a sacred pause and you realize, this is just me thinking, this is just today, it's going to be all right. And maybe at the end of the day, before you lay your head down, you take a sacred pause and you just notice all the things that you're thankful for. Be still. Surrender. Now, if the verse ended there, it might be kind of easy. Just let go, nothing more to do, woof. No more responsibility. But the verse does not end there. As Denny said when we were speaking about this earlier this week, it doesn't say, be still and go to sleep. It doesn't say, be still and get blissed out. It says, be still and know that I am God. So once again, the Hebrew is interesting. To know is yada, and that verb in the Hebrew Bible is a signal of a covenantal relationship. So this is not like knowing God in an intellectual way. This is knowing God in relationship. This is making promises to God and accepting promises from God. And good relationships, they take time, right? I mean, this is not like a one-time thing. This is a throughout your entire life thing, this building a relationship with God. So I was wondering, if you think about a healthy relationship in your life, do you remember, like, the beginning of that relationship? What was it like? What was it like when you first met that special person in your life? Fireworks. Oh, all right. What was that? Okay, so, it's exciting, right? It's fun, it's exciting, you have some curiosity. So what if you started to think about a relationship with God that way? It's kind of fun and interesting and, wow, kind of curious, right? And then what happens, let's say, 5 years down the road? Oh, nobody wants to talk about that. So sometime into a relationship, maybe it starts feeling kind of rote. It feels like you've been doing this a while. And I don't know about you, but for me, I am aware that I take some things for granted in that relationship, and that I think that the relationship is the same and that my partner is going to respond exactly in the same way as he did 15 years ago. And that's not always true. And so I wonder how many of us might be stuck in this place in our relationship with God where we think we know what this is about, but maybe not. Maybe there's some surprises. And then a couple of people after the first service made a point of this, that they enjoyed hearing this. So we in this psalm hear about the God of Jacob, right? And the God of Jacob wrestled with God all night long. Jacob was arguing with God. He didn't necessarily agree with maybe what God was making him do or how God was making him feel. So he wrestled all night long until there was a blessing. And God renamed Jacob and the people Israel, which means struggles with God. So sometimes in our relationship, let us be okay with the idea that we can struggle with God. So no matter how you perceive God, no matter where you are in your relationship with God, keep that, we okay? We okay, all right. So be still, surrender. Okay, here we go. It's the end, don't worry. Okay, so these are the comments I'm hearing. Somebody said that's how we all feel right now. Somebody else said he's surrendering. Okay, thank you. Thank you for listening. Thank you for listening. So be still and know that I am God. Surrender and find out, where is that center place? Where is that center spirit? Where is that center of love inside you? God was with Jacob when he argued and wrestled out that blessing. God was with the people of Israel when they walked in the desert for 40 years. God was with Jesus and his followers when he was nailed to a cross. God was with the European settlers and the Native Americans when they came together on the first Thanksgiving Day. God was with the people who suffered during the Holocaust. God was with the people when JFK was assassinated. God was with us on 9/11. God was with us on Election Day 2016 when we learned what a divided nation we are. God is with us today. God will be with us always. So in this chaotic world where things are constantly changing, you can be sure of this. Love is the ground of being. The Holy One binds us together and is always with us. The God of love is always there waiting for you, even if you're not tuned in. But it's really great to be tuned in. So take that sacred pause. Notice what happens. If you surrender, then you start to be in this relationship, and then that relationship grows. That is the walk of faith. That's the way to go from being afraid to knowing for sure that it's all going to be okay because God is with us. When we begin to be still and know God in the depths of our being, we will be guided. Our paths, they may be different. Everybody's going to have a little bit different of a path. But when you find that ground of your being and you listen, your path will unfold before you out of love, not fear. And when that happens, we will move into freedom.